Ken Chung, welcome to the show.
Hey, AJ, great to see you.
Great to see you as well. So tell me a little bit about getting started in real estate. I think we had chatted a little bit before, and you had mentioned your grandfather told you to buy the house next door. Tell me that story.
Yeah, he said if you ever get a chance, buy the house next door. And I couldn't buy the one next door. Great family. They still live there 20 some odd years later. And so I bought the one at the end of the block when it came up for sale. And I did the renovations, put a suite into it, and then I refinanced it and I pulled all my money out. And so I was kind of in the same position I was before I bought it, but with extra cash and now a house that cash flowed. So I thought, well, that worked. I might as well do it again. So, and then I realized that I could buy 2 at the same time. I didn't know that, so I bought 2 at the same time, and then I thought, "Hey, I'll try to do 3," so I closed on 3 in the same day, and next thing you know, I had 12 houses in 2.5 years, but I kinda came across that typical stumbling block that everybody does. You have houses in your name, and now you're over your leverage and your debt service ratio doesn't work, and, well, how are you supposed to buy more? So my buddy called me up and invited me to go see this course that he went to. He goes, "Yeah, I went to this course and I signed up for this weekend thing and I paid so much." And I said, "You did what and paid how much?" And I said, "All right, well, what do these guys know that I don't know?" So I played hooky and I went down there to see what they knew that I didn't know. And all weekend I'm messaging, texting my lawyer, my lawyer, and my mortgage broker, and I said, "Hey, can I do this? Can I do that?" They go, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, well, then why didn't you guys tell me any of this before?" "Well, you never asked." Okay. So I did. So then I took these courses and I realized that there was opportunity all over the country and with way better cash flow than what I was having at home. So I went out to Winnipeg and I I swear these guys thought I was crazy. I had Dave Manouk, rest his soul. He's no longer with us. He's a wonderful man. And I had him as a realtor and a property manager, and they met me at the hotel. And I put in 145 offers that weekend. Yeah, it was a trip. A few weeks later, we bought the first one, and we paid 17,500 for it. And put it on a credit card. So then I did the suggested renovations, and I did the reappraisal. It appraised out at like 29,000. So the renovations only cost me like 2,500 bucks. So with legals, closing, everything into this, I'm into it for like $2,200. Well, after the appraisal and pulling my money out, I was into it for no dollars and it cash flowed $900 a month. I said, well, that was good. And I put those into corporations, and that was the best thing ever. Next thing you knew, out of all those offers that I put in, a whole bunch more started to flow in, and they wanted to know, is this guy for real? Can he actually close? Can he do this? Can he do that? And my realtor's telling me, yep. So I bought 120 houses in 90 days with none of my own money after that. I met people on the plane, on the bus, wherever I was, talking about real estate, and they wanted to get involved somehow. So I borrowed their money and bought houses, and then I returned their money. And some people didn't want it back, so I could buy more houses. So
S-
it was a
So when was
really good.
you were buying houses for $17,000, putting in a little bit more? When was this, and have things changed since then, or are you still doing the same thing?
No, I'm not doing the same thing anymore, of course, evolution of all that, but that was back in 2004. 2004, I did that. And, I mean, that just happened to be, it wasn't the cheapest, but it was the first one I bought. I bought one for $12,000 once, and it was a mess. But I liked, at that point, I started buying more, and I was spending on average 25 to 65,000, depending on the neighborhood, duplex, triplex, that kind of thing. Um, and they were amazing, and the cash flow worked. Everything just worked. So I bought them, and not just in Winnipeg. I was all over the country. I was in North Battleford. I was in places in Ontario. I was in Calgary. I had property on the island, everywhere. And at that time, you just had to make it work. It had to make sense. I don't do your typical math as you know rookie investors, or I didn't say rookie. I guess people are new to it and that don't really know what I know or learn what I learned. I mean, I spent $40,000 on my training courses to learn the things I did to get the ins and outs and the trade secrets. And I was just totally blown away. I was like, "Wow, I had no idea you could do that, and this is how you protect it, and this is how you do that, and this is how you negotiate." I got so good at the game that people that wanted to get out of the game that had been investors for years, old timers, they'd call up my realtor and say, "Hey, you still working with that guy that was buying all those houses?" "Yep." And he goes, "Tell ask him if he wants to buy 20 of my houses. I want out." So I bought his whole package of 20, and we did it in like 3 weeks. The deal worked. It makes sense. You have to know what people want. It's not so much their, they have needs, but what do they want out of it? And if you can help them, then it becomes a win-win. And I mean, we bought 40 in North Battleford and right on the same street. We totally changed the whole neighborhood. It was an amazing project. Goodness gracious, I mean, St. Albert, Regina, Saskatoon, everywhere. Even back east, I had property back in New Brunswick.
What do you think made you a different buyer as opposed to some of the other folks? Because I'm sure there are other real estate investors in the market. You had bought a lot of houses. What do you think made you a different buyer or a better buyer than some of those other folks that landlord could have sold his 2021 unit portfolio to? Why did he choose you over them?
Mostly because they knew I could close. I did what I said I was going to do. And that was a big thing. When you're an investor and you put deals together and you make offers and you get them accepted, the worst thing you could do is ruin your reputation by not closing. And I get it. Stuff happens and you can't always close. At that time, it becomes more difficult for you as an investor. I mean, your word is what people go by to make sure that you can do what you say you're going to do. And that made a difference for most of them. But there was one other aspect of it. A lot of these other investors, I mean, they've been around the block for a while and they know they want to retire. And some of the people I was able to get word to through my connections was I could help them offset their capital gains, structure their the capital gains tax they're going to have so that they can offset it, postpone it, pre-plan it. And a lot of that comes down to proper tax planning strategies, really was what it comes down to. If you're going to have a capital gain, you want to make sure you have in a year that you have little or no income or huge write-offs to offset. And a lot of people don't think about that when I just want to sell it. Okay, but wait a minute. When you sell it, you're going to have huge capital gains. Yeah, I know. I just got to have to deal with it. Okay, but what if I could help you offset some of that? Not that you're not going to pay it, but you're going to offset it. And so that means that you might pay less or to yourself from your business, so you have less income, and then you have a capital gain next year, but no income, so your income tax on it's going to be minimal. And I showed them how to do that. Some of them, that's how I structured vendor take backs over 2, 3, 5 years. I didn't need them over 2, 3, 5 years to work for me, but it worked for them, and that was a great thing because it made the deal go easier.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but even when I stopped
So buying
this,
your deals.
so you broken up there a bit, but when I stopped buying houses is because after buying those 120 houses, the bank calls me up and they said, "Hey Ken, we need to have a meeting." I'm like, "Okay, why is the bank calling me? What meetings do they need to have?" Right? And they said, "Well, we noticed that you have 78 mortgages with us in the last 120 days, or not last 90 days. And we need to know how, why, what your intention is, and all this." So I sat them down and I explained it, and they go, "Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I get that." So they said, "Everything's good, Ken, but we got to put the brakes on for a while because it's a lot real fast." And I'm like, "For you, okay, I understand." So I had to make some decisions because at that point I was buying 3, 4, or 5 houses a week. And I called my mentor and thank God I had a mentor. I mean, that was huge for me. I still talk to him 20 years later. We still talk every other week. But having my mentor, I called him up and said, "Well, what do I do with it?" He goes, "Well, you got cash? You can pay cash." I went, "Well, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. It's not smart leverage." He goes, "Well, why don't you wholesale it, sign the contract away to somebody else, take a fee?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. You don't understand. These are really good deals." Right. And he goes, "Even if I don't get creative, cash on cash, we're talking 50 to 80% cash on cash a year return. These are good deals. I don't want to give them up." "Well, then pay cash," he says. I'm like, "No, that just goes against the principle." So then I started wholesaling deals off because I knew investors all over the country who wanted to figure out how I was doing what I was doing. but they didn't build a network. I went out there across the country in different markets, and I built a network with property managers, realtors, mortgage brokers, insurance agents. So all this stuff was done for me as my power teams in each city. So all I would do is I would send a feature sheet out to my investors, say, anybody interested in this? Yep, this is what your cash on cash looks like. And give them the short version of the math, a one pager. They go, yep, I want it. So back then we didn't have e-transfer. So first one that got the deposit to my bank account got my contract, right? And the important part is if you're going to sign something away, you're still liable on the hook if they don't close, right? I only had one go sideways and that they couldn't close on. So I went in and I closed on and bought it, and then I refinanced it and added it to my portfolio, and so be it. But these buyers started doing that. My realtor, Dave, that I mentioned earlier, in 18 months, I ran about 183 deals through him. He had a good couple of years, and we had a great relationship, and it was nice because even though I wasn't the one always buying them, the deal flow was still coming through me, and I was able to find other deals. And then I decided to go more into the commercial side of things and trailer parks and storage facilities because buying single family residential had kind of run its course for me. With that part of the portfolio, it was time to expand. And I got into storage facilities and got into line development. It was amazing.
So let's talk a little bit more about the capital stack on some of these deals, right? When you're closing 120 deals or 120 apartments or houses in 90 days, that takes some serious capital or some serious creativity. So if you could
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about how did you get creative or how did you source the capital to buy that kind of deal flow? Even when you have great deals, you weren't trying to wholesale them back. It sounds like you were trying to close every single one. So
Yeah.
could you share with us how you figured that out?
A lot of it was private money. People knew what I was doing. They knew I was buying houses. They knew I quit my job. I didn't need the job anymore, right? So they were like, "Well, what are you up to?" And so what I was doing, I said, "Well, I used private money to buy properties and the cash flow, and I renovate them, refinance them, and pull the money out and give people their money back." And I mean, most people didn't want their money back. I mean, think back then, I was paying on average 15 to 20% per annum on their money, and people were ecstatic. They were happy to go, "No, no, no, I don't want the money back. Please go find something else to do with it." So it was easy for me to turn that, right? And it was really about being capital rich. Now, there were some that you were saying that um, I had to get creative on. And that was sometimes getting the take a vendor take back for a short bit and allowing me to do the renovations needed because a lot of these properties that I was buying, some are in the hood, some are in decent neighborhoods, but a lot of them were under disrepair. And people don't necessarily like to think of their places under disrepair because it's their pride and their joy if they're emotionally attached to them, or if it's a small family portfolio, then instead of a big company kind of thing. And not to offend them, I find different ways of creatively going in there. Say, listen, your place is great and all, and I want to honor our deal, and I need to to do some renovations to bring it up to the level I want to bring it up to for new renters, etc. And I said, "It would really help me out if I could get a credit upon closing, and I could give you a note for that and be able to pay you out in, say, 60 or 90 days once I've done the rentals and the refi. And worst case, I'm looking at 120 or 180 days." And they said, "So we get paid this much upfront and this," and most people say, "Yeah, that's okay." Because at the end of the day, I'm giving them a bit of an incentive. I'm putting money into the property, so it's not like I'm just throwing it back out on the market that way. And they really did appreciate my approach, and they knew basically they got their profits out of it. At that point, there was just a little bit left that they had to wait for. And when you're talking about places that anywhere from, 30 to 100 grand, that's not huge money for them to wait for. And a lot of the times I would even get those at 0% interest, is that I just pay them back on a cashback payment like a VTB would. So that was easy when people were open to it. And I said I could close with cash. Sometimes it'd be, well, they'd hum and haw. Maybe I'd throw them an extra 1,000 or 2 on a purchase price or on the back end so that they can get a little bonus for doing it. I mean, really, if I'm gonna throw you $1,000 to $2,000 on a $10,000 VTB, you're making an extra 10-20%, and you're not even waiting 60 to 120 days. So that's pretty good return on your money. And that just helped being creative, I guess. Sometimes I bring in a private partner on it, but most of those were just simply my corporation. So
You mentioned your uncle earlier on. Did you ever joint venture either with him or with family members? And how did that impact your growth in different partnerships, whether they be private money lending on the commercial side or the residential side, or perhaps joint ventures or syndications, for larger stuff? I'm curious, how did you fund some of the larger deals?
well, larger deals I didn't do. I did with myself or some other partners, and a lot of that would have been either private money or private silent partners that came into the deal. Sometimes I'll give you an example. We brought one for the storage facility. I brought in one guy I'd known for years. I known him 18, 20 years. And the deal was he funded the project. We executed it. We put the deal together, and then we refinanced it once we got the storage facility to a certain level. He'd get his money back and then would sit inside the deal as a third partner for effectively doing nothing really but funding it. So you do what you got to do sometimes to make it work. There are other deals like I'm going down to Des Moines, Iowa next week, and I'm going to meet a lady who has a tower, an office tower in her mall that's vacant, and it was going to be part of a renovation project, an arena, and all that kind of stuff, but that went sideways. So we're now talking about doing a joint venture. Well, we fund the rehab on it, and then we flip it out and we sell it off, and we have a haven't settled on a structure yet, but we're doing it. And that way she doesn't actually have to sell the property. She'll be able to be a long lifetime lease on it. And she will not, because it's been in the family for so long and they've used cost segregation and things like that to depreciate the building. She won't have to repay that right now either for another 100 years. So it's a pretty good deal for her and a great deal for us. I don't even have to buy the building. So now we're looking at a school 3 hours away from
So,
my
so,
kid.
so let's go back a little bit. You mentioned she didn't have to. Essentially, there's depreciation recapture if you were to sell that building. Can you walk me through a little bit more how you're thinking about structuring that deal? Because like that's a really fascinating concept. Her not having to repay that in a certain structure. Would you walk us through that?
Yeah. Well, anytime you have that real estate and you've depreciated your asset, when you go to sell it, the government's going to want to recapture that against the taxes, right? And then got your basic capital gain and from what you're selling it for to what you bought it for. And because what we're trying to create is new and different in the area, we're trying to create a variety of housing within for all generations, not just for older seniors or for newcomers, but a blend of both. And because it's part of the mall, there's a great opportunity to feed a variety of generations of business into the mall. And it's a great thing for both sides. So it can win that way. But in her case, she wouldn't have to repay the taxes that she's written off over the years on that cost segregation. I'm not 100% sure on how it works in the US, but I know that there are recapturing mechanisms for the government to get that money back out of you. And she's factored that into her sale price, of course, but really you're going to sell it. I mean, you're going to have to pay it. Wouldn't it be nice not to have to pay it and not have to sell it? So I was working under the pretense of something that's been done here where I live, and the Bennett family here owns a chunk of land, and they have a strip mall on it, but they also have townhouses on it. And all of that townhouses, they're set up like a life lease, kind of like you would do on native land, 99-year life lease. So they'll never own the property; they just pay a lease to live there. So they're getting the benefit of le- getting into the market on lesser value, but you don't own the property, just the house. And in that case, it turns out that that is just a commercial lease. Just like the regular part of the mall, your lease 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, so the 10-year option, that kind of thing. Except for now, you're putting it together as a 99-year commercial lease in place for the strata, and the strata leases it out from them. And then you, as part of the strata, you own the inside four walls. You never own the outside four walls, anything outside of that. So it's actually a good way to go. People can get into a market, especially where her mall is. Her mall's in a nicer part of town and great for residential, but it costs for people trying to get into the market in that neighborhood. is expensive for them. And this gets them into the market in a nice neighborhood at a lesser cost. I hate saying the typical phrase, so I'm not going to say it, but I say attainable housing that makes sense and is reasonable, because there's no more affordable housing. It's a joke. You try and build something nowadays, and the costs are so extravagant that it's not affordable anymore. The only thing that's affordable would be rental and something that's subsidized somehow. So we want to make it so it's attainable. People can still have part of it and they still own the inside four walls.
So I would love to learn a little bit more about how that deal's structured. Like, is it where you're flipping this, you're gonna be selling it afterwards? What's the business plan? Is it, she's still going to own it, and she's going to be collecting rent, kind of like a seller note that's gonna pay her over the next 100 years? Is that structured?
No, in a traditional, think about it like a traditional land lease with a native band, you can never own the property, right? So you'll never buy it, but you'll pay a lease to live there for 100 years, right? And then you lease and extend that lease, and it's part of the contract that's driven up with the government. But when it's not on native land and you're in a commercial setting, you set it up as structure it like a commercial lease, triple net, all those wonderful things included, is still there as an entity. So so the current owner will maintain ownership of the property, and we will do the renovations and we'll sell it out. And the benefit is we'll sell it, coop our costs and such, and the corporation that owns the mall will still maintain the mall, and they'll get a new 99-year lease out of it. Now there'll be options to renew that lease, so that obviously there's no depreciation and worry about, oh, I've only got 10 years left on my lease. What are we gonna do? Right? You just renew that lease. So that's how those are structured. It's just a commercial lease, no different. Somebody else came in and bought the mall, they would buy the corporation that owned the mall, and they would take over that lease.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I remember talking to you about that in one of our offline conversations, and it's such a fascinating way that you structure different deals because there's so much creativity that can be done that's just not been done. Because I think people don't really understand how to do it. So thank you for sharing a little glimpse into that.
No worries. Yeah, it's a lot like that other one I explained to you. It's fractional ownership, or you can get into, especially with trailer parks. They're fantastic to do with trailer parks because not many people will finance them on them. But if you create the financing structure and you buy the trailer park and then you sell it to the existing tenants, effectively they're all buying in as owners, as fractional owners into the park. And there's a lot more complicated details to it, but effectively that's what it becomes. They become owners within. And in this case, it just becomes an ownership thing, but a land lease instead of a ownership of the land.
So it sounds like your business model has evolved substantially from at first just buying houses to now essentially owning financing packages. Can you walk us through that evolution a little bit? And why do you see the new system right now as maybe superior to how you started?
Okay. Well, when I first got in this, it was to provide decent living spaces at a reasonable price. That's what, I said, if I could ever, when I moved here, man, some of the things I looked at were horrid. And I said, how can anybody even have pride in wanting to show that to somebody to rent? And I said, if I could ever provide it, that's how I got into this game as a rental, to be a landlord. So doing that, after acquiring all the properties and you go through these different phases, you evolve into the things you want to do or the things that you get dragged into. You get different deals and different investors and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? You want to come play with on this project with me? So the next thing you know, I bought trailer parks and I bought storage facilities, and my desires got to be different at that point. Trailer parks, because they're still good, affordable housing at the time. And then I got into land development again because people didn't want their money back. I had to go find something else to do with it. And I didn't want to buy any more houses. A lot of challenges come into play. When you get that big and you have that many houses, you have all kinds well, if you want to be a landlord, that's a good way to go. I, as a landlord, experienced Molotov cocktails on the front of a triplex that one of my tenants was in. I've experienced people going in there and stripping out all the plumbing and the copper and selling it, flooding the basements. I've had I can't tell you how many insurance claims for people leaving the hose bibs on the outside of the house for the winter time, and then you end up freezing up and you get floods and you get all this water damage. Then I experience, property managers stealing 5, 10 grand a month. And then I experienced another property manager embezzling 500,000. And then you experience hostile takeovers and you have all these other wonderful things. At the end of the day, I lost the desire to be a landlord. I could care less if I ever had another tenant, toilet, or termite. They just don't work for me. It's not that I don't feel for them, but at this point, I'm at a different stage in my life now, where I've decided that I would rather be in a position of doing a few bigger projects. I just bought 2 other properties out in Alberta, we're doing the documents on now. And after these next few projects, I plan on just being more of a private lender, helping people who basically were where I was 20 years ago, who want to get in the game, who want to do things. And I have the benefit of experience and knowledge and background to better protect my investment going in, so I know what they're up to, and I have a better idea of whether it's actually going to work or not. Some people I might joint venture with because it makes more sense. But I believe now, doing what I'm doing with all this project I was just telling you about with the office tower, we get to provide some really cool housing and an impact in the community. And think of the difference for the family that owns the mall if they don't have to repay that capture, the income tax capture and capital gains, because that's a big impact for them too. And I know it's not their only investment, but it does affect them financially. I look at what I'm doing now with the properties I just bought in Alberta. Smaller town, huge need for accommodations. People don't have the abundance of home builders and properties building up there. The lots are already kind of ready. So for me, I can go in there and I put in 1,000 square foot homes, which is enough for 2 or 3 bedroom units for people. And I'm going to sell them. And some of them might carry vendor takebacks on because some people need a little more help sometimes to get into the market. And if I can help people do that, carry the note, I'm making a little more money on the end of it and they're getting into the market and win. I still get to help people. And I think that's something, I don't know if you ever saw it on my business card, but one of my mottos is to make a difference. Whatever you're doing, make a difference with it. Right.
And you mentioned one of the ways that you want to be making a difference these days is becoming a private lender. And I'm really curious, you mentioned protecting your investments. I know that's something that's very important to you. Would you share with us just a little bit about how you go about protecting your investments, some of that knowledge that you maybe learned over the years, and how you've now incorporated that into either your current projects that might be the financing packages or the private lending that you're going into in the future?
Yeah. Okay. So when you think about the asset protection strategies, corporations come into play. There's a lot now of the government changing the rules and transparencies and all that kind of stuff. Then you can use family trusts and our current wonderful government. They've made a mess of our family trusts and how they're dealt with. So that's not quite as easy, but it is a big factor. And I still believe in it to an extent, but I believe in living corporate lifestyle and having that layer of protection throughout. A lot of lenders, or let me ask you this, if you're a lawyer and I have a house and I've got a $1 million home, but I've got a $700,000 mortgage on it, and you decide you're going to sue me for somebody's come to you and ask you to sue me, but all of a sudden you go on and you see, well, there's a second mortgage registered for 500,000. So geez, he's over leveraged at 1.2 and the only place is only worth 1 million. Are you, as your lawyer, going to do it free or hoping to get a piece of what you get? Or are you going to bill your client for every dime going forward because you don't think there's much to get? Right. A lawyer is typically going to look up at what you have, what you own, and see if there's anything for you to cash out or leverage to pay him, to pay his client. If there's nothing there, they're not likely going to want to put the energy or effort into it. And they'll tell their client that they're barking up the wrong tree. So leveraging your properties in the proper way. And there's some creative ways of doing that. I'll keep offline, but there are ways you can do that by leveraging yourself and making sure that you don't have on paper showing much equity of anything. And then you have a couple different layers between you as well. And I know in the US, a lot of the strategies, I had properties down there at one point, and the family trust that I had set up and shell corps, that was enough. And I don't know, it's been a long time since I've had any of those, if you can still do that across the border or not. But I know that it's more difficult. I still believe in having a family trust. So, for example, if I had adolescent children and I was going to buy a house for each one of them so that there's something for them down the road, I would put it in a family trust for them, or a bare trust agreement where it would always be beneficial interest to them, but never ownership. And especially when you think about, God, today's law is about how long somebody has to be with somebody before they can claim, what do they call that? Spousal privilege, spousal divorce or whatever. And now they want half your income, half your assets, right? I'm sorry, but if you don't own the house and you're only living in it because it's a trust that you have beneficial interest in, well, it's not yours. They can't take it, that kind of thing. That happens so much. The longer I'm in this game, the more people I meet, the horror stories I hear about it are incredible. And I used to think, happy to have boys. I didn't have to worry about the problems with girls that way and guys trying to, take advantage of them for their money. Then I realized the whole other thing when another friend of mine had his son knew that he came from a family with money. And so she decided to entrap him and try and get pregnant and try and go after his wealth that way. Fortunately, he was protected, but at the end of the day, that's scary when you think about it. The responsibilities, not only do we have for our assets and our portfolios, but to our families and the generations that are going to follow behind us with it. You need to make sure that your corporate structure and your trusts are set up in such a way that penetrable, nothing's totally impenetrable, but that is pretty damn difficult and not attractive enough for anybody to come get. So I always say, meet your local estate planning lawyers and then meet your asset protection strategists because they're totally different people. I went with the knowledge that I had to a local estate planning lawyer, told him what I needed in a family trust, et cetera, et cetera. He said, "Oh, you don't need that. You're miles away from needing anything like that." He didn't know I was going to go buy 120 houses in 90 days. The cost of me to take that and reverse what I needed to reverse to put it into the program I should have put it in was going to cost me excess of $250,000. Right? It was unreal. So at that point, I started liquidating the portfolio to buy new stuff, but set it up under the new structure. And I still think about that. The cost that I was going through just to do that was unreal. So it is smart to set up right. People say, well, you don't need that yet. Okay, but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So work with me here. But yeah, corporate structure, family trust, make sure you protect it.
And as a private lender, how are you looking at deals? How are you vetting deals to determine which are the ones that you want to lend on and which are the ones that you want to stay away from? Is there a operator component? Is there a deal component, a market component? What does your kind of criteria look like?
All the above, because they're important. I would look at deals that some people wouldn't look at because there are a lot of people who have very stringent rules. If it's town less than 10,000 people, if it's economic has been flat, stale, what has the economics of that town been? What is the average income in there? That is something a lot of people don't look at. They look at just the population base, then they look at the borrower and who are they? What are they doing with it? I'll give you an example. Where I live in the Okanagan Valley, it's like the Napa Valley of the North. I mean, it's wine country. It's amazing places. Just south of us is Penticton, and a little bedroom community in Penticton is called Naramata. Naramata has less than 10,000 people. You cannot get financing for more than 60 or 65% loan to value in there by conventional bank anywhere and even private lenders, because it's less than 10,000 people. But I'll tell you, we're talking houses that are like $2 million and where you've got a significant amount of wealth there, but a lot of it is vineyards and what have you, orchards. There's a lot of people who live along there that have money. So why wouldn't you lend in there? I think the problem is when you get people who say, here is my criteria. If it doesn't check all these boxes, I'm not doing it. So don't bring me anything that doesn't check all these boxes. Where I'm going to be the guy that says, if you've got somebody that says, check all these boxes and you bring that deal to them, I want to see what the deal is. And I want to see what makes it variable. And then I'll do my own research into it. I think that'll make the huge difference for me as simply as a lender in general, because I don't believe everything fits inside that tight little box. Now, would I charge a little bit more money for it because of the risk factor? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Is it a bit riskier? Sure. But at the same time, I believe that if the deal's right, and it'll be okay.
So let's talk about some of the deals that might be wrong deals, right? Either wrong deals for certain investors or wrong deals where you could see people like learning a lesson from certain deals. What would you say are some red flags on deals that you look out for, either on deals that you're lending on or deals that you've looked at personally or maybe done in the past? What are some of the lessons that you've learned or red flags that you look for now?
Oh, goodness. I guess probably the number one would be looking at the structure of the deal that was created and put in front of me to look at funding. Because if it was something that had been gone into quickly, not enough time, that somebody didn't have to do their due diligence. I do know how long it takes to do proper due diligence on a variety of deals, whether it's a single fix and flip or a land development. If you've gone into it and you don't have enough due diligence time and you're on a crunch, there's usually pressure points. And people are driven usually by emotion at that point. So I look at that as, why is the deal structured the way it is? If the deal looks okay, then I want to look at who are the people behind the deal, like who's the actual borrower, what's their experience doing what they're doing. Not that I believe that they have to have the experience necessarily to execute, but that they have to have a power team or support group behind them to execute. Because I don't know everything, and I still rely on my mentors and realm of influence to help me get through things I do day to day. So I don't think anybody should be punished for not having that specific knowledge, but as long as they have got the support with the power team behind them, that's huge. And a lot of people don't present that as one of their strengths, or one of the strengths of the deal is the people they have in or behind the deal, because that does make a huge difference, right? I think the other ones are, if the deal looks too good to be true, it's not always the case that it is. But why is it? I'll give you an example. One of the deals I'm going into right now, it's messy as all can be. Man, if I was a normal person, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't finance it with a 10-foot pole. Not a chance. But you know what? Because it's messy, I know there's a ton of money to be made in the deal, right? So it's got an extra acre. Okay, so I told you there's two deals that I bought just in Alberta, North Calgary, and one of them is 2.3 acres and another one is 3 acres. I'm paying the same price for both. The difference is the one for 3 acres is the messy one. The one for 2.3 acres is not messy, whole lot cleaner, in and out, bada bing, bada boom. I mean, there's so many easy things about that project that's going to be great. The other one is messy, but by cleaning up the mess, I'm probably going to see an extra 500K in profit out of that deal. So is it worth it? Yeah. Normally, what I stress about it, it's small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. If I told you what I was paying for it, AJ, you'd die. And here's the kicker. I look at the project I'm doing now in Kelowna, where I got to pay $1 million for the property. I got to spend 3 million to build it. I got to spend 750,000 plus soft costs to the city, to the taxes, to the, to the contractor I've got. I'm gonna spend almost 5 million in this thing to make 1 million that I still have to split with a partner. I'm gonna go over here and get 3 acres. I'm probably gonna clear out of that 3 acres with 2.5 million, but I got less than 300,000 leverage. That's good return, right? Total different beast, different province, different rules, different messes. But I'm excited, and I have people who know the background of things that need to get fixed, and I'm connected with the right people over there for sure. So that doesn't scare me, although most people would not even come close to touching it. And as a
Yeah.
private lender, they're going on. I've got private lenders that I'm bringing into it because I need to on it, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, no problem," because they're going on me. They're going on my experience, my background. They're not necessarily going about the mess. They have no idea about the mess. Well, that's not true. They know there's a mess. They just know I can clean it up.
Yeah, the strength of the operator can make a huge difference. And one of the things that I know you stress pretty heavily is the creative financing portion. And in 2025, it's a really interesting market with higher interest rate, higher lending. Just curious, which for you have you seen to be the best creative financing strategies that are the most useful in this environment right now?
Well, I'll give you an example on this mess that she wanted to sell. She wants 155,000, and I offered her 160. She's going to carry a 60,000 VTB with no interest payments until the end, and I'm going to give her 12%, which is 1% a month. And so if I pay her out in 3 months, it costs me 3 grand, or no, sorry, not 3 grand. It would cost me 1% of 60,000 per month. So whatever it is, no early payment penalty. She needs it closed for her purposes, and I want it closed creatively because it was a short timeline for me to get in and deal with it, and that just worked out better for both parties. I did it very amicably, and she's got a lot on the go. So, but she's also a huge help to the project. So, we see ourselves helping each other throughout my project, even though she's no longer part of the acreage. She's part of the other parcels around it, and we're gonna have some fun together. But working with people who on projects or bigger projects, typically the people you're dealing with that are selling are investors. When you get commercial properties, they're investors. It's not their personal residence. It's not an emotional thing for them. And a lot of them would love to know how they can mitigate one thing or another or how to deal with it differently. So this one just happened to work out that way. Like I said, this other one I was talking about in the tower in Iowa, or yeah, Des Moines, Iowa. If that works out, it's a huge thing. We didn't even decide to do a vendor take back or any of that stuff. It was like, just joint venture with us, work with us on it because we can do that. And it's a win-win. I think in today's market, with interest rates being what they are, people do see opportunity, but that's also, something that's different in our market than yours across the border. You guys down there, you can get a more interest rate. It's for the 30 years that you're getting a mortgage. Ours has to change every 3 to 5 or whatever term we grab. So it might be a 25-year M, but I'll give you an example. My principal residence, where I was paying 2.45% for 5 years, was great. And now that it's up for renewal and we've had that crazy interest in between, it's come down. But now I got to pay 4%. That sucks, right? Now, if I could have had that 2.54 for 30 years, it'd be a dream. So it's just a different way in different countries and the way we do business. But it doesn't stop me from wanting to look across the border and do things. And I've got lots of friends down there. We talk about doing stuff all the time. And it can work just as much as, I try and text you guys to come across the border and play with us here too. Besides, you got to remember for every dollar you get is $1.40 our money.
So there's going to be some folks that are new to real estate or new to commercial real estate that will listen to this, and they'll look at your journey. They'll think about, he bought 120 houses in 90 days. He transitioned into self storage and he started doing some other stuff, land development, bunch of different things. What is one piece of advice that you'd say is the most important for that person who's listening right now?
Just like a trade, hire a mentor. When you think about what you want to accomplish, there are people who sell programs all day and all different kinds of programs. They'll teach you how to do burrs. They'll teach you how to do wholesale. They'll teach you to do this. That's great. But what you need is a mentor who is well-rounded and experienced and educated and trained and experienced in all assets or facets of real estate. Because when you need to dig down and you've got a problem, you need to figure out how to pivot. That's the person that's going to be able to help you pivot. Hiring a mentor is probably the single biggest difference in my success and other people that did the same thing but didn't hire a mentor.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive, how big of a difference it sounds like in your journey a mentor had. You went from, was it 0 houses to 12 in the first, like, 2.5 years? And then after that, in 90 days, you bought 120, like 10x that after you hired a mentor. How quickly after hiring a mentor were you able to do that? Was it a month? Was it 3 months?
Okay, so I hired my mentor and he couldn't fit. He was very in demand. And the only time he could fit in for us was between Christmas and New Year's. So he came up and my buddy came up from the coast and we sat here for that week between Christmas and New Year's. And my offers went out end of January. And so the end of January for the next 90 days. So mid-April. Yeah, mid-April when I closed on those other 40, that's when I hit 120 in 90 days. So it was that quick after. It was really kind of bringing the pieces together. And I think I try and do it myself. Every once in a while, I open myself up to taking on a new mentee. I do it differently than most because a lot of them will say, "Well, you only get me for 6 months or a year for this price." I say, "You pay the price, and as long as you don't abuse me, I'll be there forever for you." I still have students that mentored 15 years ago, maybe 10. Well, no, 15 years ago. I still talk to him every 6 months. He calls me about something, and always answer the phone. And why? Because he doesn't abuse me, right? But my mentor, what he did was he brought out that inner genius within us, and that really helped. Wow, I just didn't think of that, and realizing that it wasn't all about me, and it was about other people and helping others and making a difference. And when I opened up myself to working with others, or allowing others to be part of my process, people say they don't want to share the trade secrets, right? No secrets. Everybody does them. Just whether they learn about them from you, me, or Bob. It is so. But the more people that I understand are on the same page as me, and the more people I have to play with, the multiple minds we get to pull from. You and me, AJ, we're going to take the same course, the same day, the same weekend. We're going to go through the experience, but we're going to take two different things from it, and we're going to remember it differently. And when I go in and I go, I don't remember that. Wait a minute, AJ was there with me. I'll call AJ and say, "Hey, AJ, do you remember we were talking about this?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, there's this part that I can't remember." He goes, "You remember when they did this?" And I go, "Yeah, okay, now I get it." It's multiple minds. And as long as I'm not just abusing you just for your mind, right? You call me up and say, "Hey, I got a problem." I'm happy to help. Great, because I know what goes around, right? And I got people to lean on me for years, asking for my help on stuff or my insight on something. Like, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, the more people that are successful around me, the better it is.
And let's say someone wants to get around you to become more successful. How do people find you? How do they reach out?
Well, the easiest is my email, which is ken@kenchung.ca. Go to my website, which is up. Yeah, I think it's up now. But just recently redid it. Find me on Facebook, YouTube. Just send me a message. I'm always happy to chat. Although I will tell me how you found me, because I get so many people, and there's so many of these Autobot things. It's driving me crazy. How some of them just reach out, want to talk to you about this, and you talk to them, and there's somebody trying to. It's not somebody. It's an Autobot thing. So if you kind of throw a personal message into the message when you reach out, best way, so I kind of know who you are, where you came from. I'm always happy. I can talk real estate for 24 hours.
Same. Well,
Right?
it's been about an hour, Ken. I appreciate you hopping on the show. Any last words of advice to the audience? Anything you'd like to say?
Trust the fact that you don't know everything. Trust the fact that you can get help from others. I mean, Henry Ford said it best. He says, "I don't have to know all the answers. I just have to have a button on my phone here that I can push to get somebody to give me the answer." And trust that the people that you're connected to are true and genuine. Take the steps. Be cautious but open. It's I've been there. I have a thing in my peak. I was worth 20 million, then I lost it all, and then I decided to rebuild. And rebuilding just looks different now, and I'm okay with that. And when I talk to people about the journey, some of them go, "Damn," they don't even want to think about that part of the journey. My level of problems when I was at that peak were just different in scale than what they were for people who hadn't done it yet. So work through the process, but make sure you surround yourself with people that know what they're doing, and you'll find that there'll be others. Don't burn your bridges, and definitely hire yourself a mentor, because that's one of the best things that you can do.
Ken Chung, Capital Conversations. Ken, thanks again. Great to see you.
You bet, AJ.
Take care.
You bet.